Today is July 1st, 2020, which means that's time for a monthly recap where I check out the comments that you left on my videos over the past month and I kind of reflect on how the channel's been doing and how I can do better. And this month, the month of June, was a really good month for my YouTube channel. Like, probably the best one I've had in a really long time. So currently I'm sitting at 3,360 subscribers and I gained 129 subs over the last 28 days. Views have increased a lot, 31.5 thousand, which is a 190% increase, 1,200 hours of watch time, which is a 75% increase from last month, and $16.47. That's how much money I've made over the past 28 days. And some people might laugh and say, that's all you made? But I think considering how small my YouTube channel is, I think that's pretty decent money. I mean, it's just some extra spending money I can have, making YouTube videos that I'd probably be making anyway, even if I didn't have a partnership. I mean, sure, it would be nice to build it up, but it's not like I have any aspirations to turn this into like a full-time gig. I just don't think that's really a viable option considering all the demonetization and how volatile it is in terms of income. Like, one month you could be making like $10,000 and the next month you're making $1, you know what I mean? And I've seen so many YouTube channels over the years, and I've been doing YouTube for a long time. Like, a lot of people don't realize, like, I've been doing YouTube for over 11 years now. I made my first YouTube video when I was 11 years old. That's half my life doing YouTube. But I've seen so many channels come and go over the years, people who kept building their channel up, but then they became irrelevant and pretty much went bankrupt because they relied way too much on YouTube for income. And how about all the channels that get wrongfully terminated for bullshit community guideline strikes and never get their channel back? So doing YouTube full-time is probably not a good idea. Even if I was at the point where I was making enough money to sustain myself, it just doesn't seem really smart to rely on one website for your entire life. So the way I view YouTube is that I pretty much make videos talking about video games, right? The fact that I even make any money off of that, even if it's only like 20 cents or 40 cents per video, I still think that's awesome because I'm getting paid to do something that I'd probably be doing anyway. Like, do you really think I'm being like, yeah, I'm gonna grind, I'm gonna make these YouTube videos, I gotta get that 40 cents, you know what I mean? Like, I don't do that. It's something I love to do, whether I'm making $20 a month or 20 cents a year. That's really not the big thing that motivates me to make these videos. To me, the big thing that motivates me is whether or not people actually enjoy the content that I make, whether I make content that people actually want to see. And when I get these comments like, oh, I love your videos, like, I've been through a rough day today, and watching your videos makes me feel so much better. Like, it's stuff like that that really, that's the big payoff. Nonetheless, I still appreciate how much the channel has grown lately, and maybe before the end of the year we can get to 4,000. But without further ado, let's get to your comments. So the first video I made in the month of June was talking about free Xbox Live Gold. I actually showed how to get Xbox Live for free, which is something, it's a method that I use. It wasn't like a scam or anything, because I'm sure people were looking at that video like, why the hell are you posting a video like this? Like, are you trying to scam me? Like, because that's really out of character for me, so people were like watching this video like, what the fuck? But no, it was Bing. Basically, you go on Bing and you get rewards points. It's all legit. It's actually from Microsoft. And I just decided to post that because free online is something we talk about a lot on the channel, about how it's bullshit that you have to pay for it on consoles. It's just a way for console gamers to kind of get free online, except obviously the caveat is you have to do searches on Bings and you have to redeem points and all that. So it's not entirely free. Like, nothing in this world truly comes for free. But I think it definitely beats having to pay $60 a year to play games online. Mr. Sponge says, imagine earning points to use your own internet. PC gang. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Like, if it wasn't for the fact that, like, I had the Bing rewards, I probably would never have paid for Xbox Live Gold because to me it's just a ripoff. Because, yeah, it's something you get for free on PC, and you shouldn't have to pay for it on consoles. It's bullshit. MB says, it's hard to grind for points, though. It takes a long time. But, you know, it's like I said. It's between doing web searches, which is something I pretty much do anyway, or have to pay $60 a year. I think I know which option I'd rather have. But this video totally blew up. It got like 17,000 views, which is just crazy. Like, I didn't really expect the video to blow up like that. I really just made it for my own subscribers that were on console, not for all these other people. But I'm glad that a lot of people found it useful. And now on to the next video where I talk about a world without exclusives and how you really can't have a world without exclusives. Even though, you know, I'm a PC gamer, and sure, I would love on paper to be able to play all the PlayStation games. I already can play the Xbox games, but, you know, like, to just have all the games under one platform. But it's really not economically viable to have such a system in place because you need exclusive content for competition. And like I said, I'm a PC gamer and I would definitely benefit from having all these games on PC because it would run better, it would look better, everything would just be better on the PC. And also I wouldn't have to pay $500 to play certain games. You know, that would be really nice, but it just wouldn't work. So I got a lot of dislikes, actually got more dislikes than likes on that video, which is fine. I understand where everyone's coming from on that. I just don't think people are really understanding the bigger picture here. Because if Sony and Microsoft just had all the same same games, you really wouldn't have any reason to have two different consoles on the market. You just wouldn't. Consoles can't compete through hardware, because if they did, then the Nintendo Switch would be completely dead in less than a year. And don't tell me it's the portability, that's the only reason why people buy the Switch. It's also the games. The exclusive games that you can't play anywhere else. And that was the point I was trying to make. Like, idealistically, it would sound great on paper to have no exclusive content at all. Everyone gets to play the same games. But it's also like, well, it would be also nice if I didn't have to pay any taxes either. But in life, some things just are the way they are, and you have to accept that. And that's the same way with video game exclusives. And I have no idea how the hell I pronounce this name, Dotmeki? I gotta disagree with you that console exclusives make competition between the consoles better. Without exclusives, the consoles would be forced to compete on features and not exclusives, but at the same time, some games that currently get made wouldn't get made. The debate here reminds me a lot of the US versus Paramount Pictures in the movie industry. Before US v Paramount, movie studios owned their own theater chains and showed their movies exclusively at their own theaters. Then the court case said that the movie studios cannot own a theater. People at the time used the same justification that would hurt the number and quality of movies made. After the case, it did lower the number of movies released every year after a little bit, but the movie industry got back on their feet and made it through just fine. To say that the gaming industry wouldn't thrive without exclusives is just wrong, because look at another industry that can't have exclusives. Getting streaming services is starting to make it so they can again, but that's another conversation. TLDR. The gaming industry could exist without exclusives, but it would be a different industry. The movie industry has existed without exclusives for decades. Sure, but realistically, do you think a court case would ever happen where the courts would order Sony to put their games on Xbox and Nintendo? But ultimately, if Sony is pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into these projects, they have the right to make it exclusive. But you mentioned streaming services, which is interesting, because how are streaming services like Netflix any different from what we're talking about? Yeah, sure, you don't have to pay $500 to get Netflix, but it's still a platform that has exclusive content. And it just illustrates my point perfectly, that in order to have competition, you gotta have something that differentiates each platform from one another. Like, if it weren't for exclusives, what would be the difference between a PlayStation 5, an Xbox Series X, and Nintendo Switch? There would be no meaningful difference that would be worth having 3 different consoles in the market. And then Dr. Daniel316 says, to be honest, while I do understand that from a business standpoint, exclusives do sell consoles, I still feel that it's quite annoying when you have to spend a lot of money on other platforms just for 1 or 2 games that I would want to play. Like, yeah, I would love to try Uncharted, but I don't feel like dropping money on a PS4 when I have a PC, you know? It's just annoying, but I understand that it's how the world works and that nothing will change it. I get that, but I still think it's unfair to those who have one platform to be locked out of another game. Frankly, I do feel that developers could possibly make more money if it is on more platforms as more people have access to that game. But yeah, without exclusives, consoles would be pointless, which is true. However, I feel that if consoles' only selling points are exclusives, then that shows how bad they are and that they don't really seem to have anything redeeming outside the claim that they have access to these games that you cannot get anywhere else. Really, the issue with exclusives is complex. Yes, on one hand, it does make a console, but on the other hand, it makes it frustrating for gamers who are on a different platform than that exclusive is on, because it means they cannot play it, which is unfortunate. I myself don't really see any exclusives I would want to play, to be honest, but I can see that others would like to play them, and I do understand their point of view to an extent. I don't ever expect exclusives to go away, although I will say it would be nice if players on other platforms did get more options when it came to playing them outside from just buying a whole new console for that one game. That's my thoughts on the situation. You probably won't agree with me, Chad, but I feel like I should give my thoughts regardless. But what if I told you that I actually do agree with you? Like, everything that you said in that comment is pretty much exactly what I was trying to say in that video. I actually said that, yeah, I hate the idea of exclusives. But if exclusives didn't exist, first of all, most of these games would not exist. Uncharted, The Last of Us, Super Mario Brothers. The only reason why these games exist in the first place is so that gamers adopt their platform over the competition. And if you don't have any exclusives, then you don't have as much competition. You don't have nearly as much competition as you would with exclusives. So yes, as much as I personally hate exclusives, like I have no intentions of buying a PlayStation 5 anytime soon, probably never, honestly. And that means I'll miss out on a lot of good games, but it is what it is. Lycro9654 says, I have never liked exclusives and probably never will, but I do think consoles will still sell if exclusives were no longer a thing. For example, the Xbox One has only a few games you can't play anywhere else, Halo 5 campaign, etc., but I doubt those games are the reason Xbox is still selling these days, albeit not as high as PS4. People would still buy consoles if all games were available everywhere. Also wanted to point out, you said around 5 minutes and 40 seconds that PS4 beat Xbox basically due to exclusives. But I would say this is because of the train wreck of a release and Don Matrick. At this time, the Xbox had exclusives, but sales were awful, and it's only in the last few years PC has had the Xbox games. The exclusives has probably impacted some of the sales of Xbox, but it is a combination of things. It's not just exclusives that cause the low sales versus PS4. Apart from these gripes, I like hearing your opinions on these subjects. Well, I appreciate your support, Lycro, but I think you kind of have a bit of a misunderstanding about why the Xbox One didn't do nearly as well as the PS4. It has everything to do with the exclusives, because the exclusives that were on Xbox, first of all, weren't nearly, objectively speaking, if you look at the critical reviews and just overall reception from the gaming community, Xbox exclusives were never on par with the PlayStation exclusives this generation. It's just the truth. That includes Halo 5, it includes State of Decay, Sea of Thieves, Crackdown 3, and really that's irregardless of those games coming to PC. They just weren't good games. And yeah, early on the Xbox One was a complete train wreck. The console was $100 more expensive than the PlayStation, which ultimately I think was the thing that gave Sony the edge. But yeah, it was also the bad PR with the always online DRM, which they eventually reversed, but it still made a lot of people very untrustworthy towards Microsoft. So they said, fuck this, I'm not buying the Xbox, I'm gonna buy the PlayStation. But over time, Microsoft they were able to change their negative reputation into a positive one. With Phil Spencer as the head of Xbox, there's been a lot more positivity towards the Xbox brand over the past few years. But that still hasn't translated into higher sales for the Xbox One. Sony has consistently dominated the console market over the past 7 years. And sure, while you can't say the Xbox One was a complete failure, it was nowhere near the success of the Xbox 360. And speaking of the 7th gen, remember the whole console war between the 360 and the PS3, how close it was and how competitive everything was? Well, guess what? It wasn't always like that. Because during the first couple years, the PlayStation 3 was failing, and Sony was doing so much worse than Microsoft was in 2013. It was at a point where people were thinking that, maybe the PS3 is the last console we'll see from Sony. It's not looking good. But around 2008, 2009, Sony started to turn things around to the point where they eventually caught up with Microsoft. But it took a while for the PS3 to get to that point. And it wasn't until you had quality exclusives like Uncharted, Little Big Planet, Infamous, and even Metal Gear Solid 4 did a lot for the PS3. Because yeah, the price was a big thing that kept a lot of people away from the PS3. It originally cost, $600? But Sony also had a problem with a lack of quality games. The PS3's library from 2006 to 2008 was shit. And it wasn't until Sony kept pumping up all these exclusives that things started to turn around. So what I'm trying to say is that exclusive content definitely matters when we're talking about competition in the console market. Because without quality exclusives, the PS3 never would have been as successful as it ended up being. And if the Xbox One had better exclusives, or even had exclusives at all, because now they don't have any, it would have been more competitive with the PS4. Alright, so now on to the next video where I talk about how nostalgia is like a drug. A very addictive drug. It feels like a lot of people in society are very hooked on nostalgia. And in some cases that can be good to kind of reflect on the past and reminisce about all the good times you had, but I feel like a lot of people have a really unhealthy obsession with the past to the point where it's hurting their ability to live in the now. And this definitely seemed a bit more like a Bullet Barry video than a video that I would typically make, because I was kind of getting all metaphysical on you guys, and I was also talking like I was on some kind of substance. But you guys actually really enjoyed this video. It was actually the most liked video I had this month. And as of right now, it has not a single dislike, but I'm sure that's going to change. Someone's going to be like, oh, it has no dislikes, I'm going to go over and dislike it. So I probably shouldn't have mentioned that, but whatever. It's Fritz writes, well, this video cut deep. I had trouble letting go of a friend and thought he would come back to me and my friends, but quickly realized that it probably won't happen ever. I want to know your thoughts on the idea of closure, because even though I accepted what happened, I never really got any closure on why my friend backstabbed me. That's pretty much all I want at this point. Then I guess I'll truly be at peace with the whole situation. But again, deep but amazing video. Yeah, finding closure is definitely a really tough thing. But really what you have to come to an understanding of is that that's your brain keeping you from finding closure. Like, it's all in your mind. Because your head's trying to tell you, I can't move on until I find closure. But that's something that you can do pretty easily if you really put your mind to it. It seems like that friend of yours is a real scumbag. And you just have to tell yourself that your life is so much better without him. Even if you shared good memories together, even if things at a point were good, that doesn't mean anything right now. Because right now, this person is causing you a lot of pain. And you just need to cut the cancer out of your life for good. Just forget that he existed. I know that sounds kind of tough and it sounds a bit unrealistic, but just really forget about him. You said you have all these other friends, and what you gotta do is just appreciate the ones that you have right now, and not dwell on the past. Because clearly, you dwelling on the past is affecting your quality of life right now, and you just need to stop. I hope that helps. Then we got Ryu Bateson, who says, this really hit hard. I lost my grandmother a while ago, and I've been through tons of grief in my life, been through childhood trauma, lost dogs, drifted apart from a friend, failed art school. I've been through a lot, and I'm thankful I found your channel. Well, you have no idea how much that means to me. Truly. It's like what I said at the very beginning of this video. It's comments like these that really motivate me to continue YouTube, and I really don't have any words to describe the feeling when someone actually tells you that something you're doing has such a positive impact on their life, because especially right now, there's so much negative shit in the world, and to be a source of positivity is a really good feeling. So thank you, Ryu, for your support. And then we have Sierra Air. Was this video inspired by the song I put in my last video? Because we all know you stalk me. I stalk you? Pretty sure it's the other way around, man. Okay, now on to the next video where I talk about a stupid console fanboy. I read his comment to you guys and I just laugh at the stupidity. From what I remember, the comment that I responded to was somebody who tried to make the case that consoles are more powerful than PC because they're going to have an SSD, and on PC you do have an SSD, but you can also have a hard drive, so it's going to limit games, and consoles are going to be superior to PC. Just some stupid shit, console peasant shit. But let's see your reactions. Magnamaster says, PC allows indie developers to come out of nowhere with their games and get enough money to afford a console release, resulting in more games for console gamers to play, and also provides a big market for hardware so more powerful CPUs and GPUs get developed faster, resulting in more powerful consoles. This moron. PC is holding gaming back. That is so on point. These console fanboys don't realize that most innovations that we have with video game technology, it comes from PC. So how exactly are PCs holding back video games? And then Mecha Art says, actually, it's consoles that are holding back PCs. And that's definitely the case now because the PS4 and Xbox One, that technology is pretty much ancient at this point. Like, it was already obsolete when it came out in 2013. And we still have big AAA games like Cyberpunk that are limiting certain features because they have to release it on the PS4 and Xbox One. It does seem like the PS5 and Series X will be powerful enough so that it remains relevant for years to come. But currently, with the PS4 and Xbox One still being a thing, yeah, consoles are definitely holding back gaming from reaching its full potential. And then BitRefresh asks, so you play on PC now? I remember a few years ago watching the videos Rags made about you, and now it seems like you're singing all the praises of the PC. I'm thoroughly impressed. Yeah, my views on gaming have definitely changed a lot over the past few years. And really what it comes down to is I'm just sick of all the bullshit that Sony and Microsoft keeps pulling with these consoles. Like, this actually just happened to me today. So my friend bought me a month of PlayStation Plus because I said, like, I'm not paying for that shit, and I wasn't asking him to pay for PS Plus. I'm just saying, like, I don't believe in paying for online, and I know you want to play this game together on PS4, but I just don't want to pay for online. So he just bought it without really me asking for him to do it. And I'm like, okay, fine, I'll play it. So he bought me an Amazon code, right? I redeemed the Amazon code and it goes through, so I have a month of PlayStation Plus, but that month recently expired and they auto-renewed and they hit my fucking credit card without my fucking permission. I didn't ask them to put in auto-renewal. Back when I was stupid enough to pay for online, I always made sure that auto-renewal was off, but Sony turned it on without my permission. So I didn't know, so my account got hit for like $10. And it's shit like that that makes me say, you know what, fuck consoles. Because Valve and even Epic wouldn't pull that shit on me. And then we got Trevor Baldwin. Game developers have already said that game sizes will stay the same or may even go down because the way different assets can be stored, compressed, and accessed is way more efficient. They say on a hard drive, some files are repeated 500 times because they need to access at many different points on the hard drive. With the SSD technology, you only need one copy of assets and files, so along with everything else, I would expect 150GB games max, and that's if it's a AAA masterpiece. Yeah, I think that's a bit overselling for the capabilities of the SSD. Like, you're definitely right that it will be a little bit more efficient with the storage compared to the HDD, but I think 150GB max for a game, that's being way too optimistic. Especially considering that next-gen games are going to be a lot more powerful, a lot more capable, so they're going to use more storage as a result because they're going to be bigger games. And there's really no noticeable difference right now on PC between an HD and an SSD in terms of how much storage you're actually using. Like, if you're playing Modern Warfare right now on PC, there really isn't much of a difference. The game is fucking huge, whether you're on an SSD or an HDD. And then Meat Manager's Pizza Box says, what a shitty take. I've literally never met a single person that uses more storage on their PS4 Xbox One than 1TB. I've personally never even come close. I've been happy with 500GB and still won't come close to filling that up. But that doesn't even matter. Let's say hypothetically a storage issue was a big problem, as you said it is. It's irrelevant. Like, you are ignoring the fact that HDDs are objectively holding these machines back and preventing developers from having freedom to expand their games. You are literally just talking about how games are going to be massive because of high-resolution textures, etc. But are you forgetting that some of the high data streaming would be incredibly bottlenecked by an HDD? Like that Unreal Engine demo on the PS5 that came out? I'm telling you right now, that's borderline impossible on an HDD. Okay, let's continue reading. Sure, you are losing out on storage space because you said yourself that most people don't care. It's not because they are blinded to the problem, they just don't care. It's such a non-issue. Obviously, I'm going to take a better gaming experience in almost every way over 200 less gigabytes. Well, first of all, we're talking about a lot more than 200 gigabytes. Because if you're looking to buy a hard drive on your PC, it will cost you the exact same, around $100, to get a 1 terabyte SSD compared to a 4 terabyte HDD. So we're not just talking about 200 gigabytes here. We're talking about at least 3 terabytes. And even if it was a 200 gigabyte difference, these days 200 gigabytes can be an entire game. Not 5 games, not 10 games. There will be some games out there that will eat 200 gigabytes of your storage. And if you only have 825 on console, yeah, that's pretty pathetic. But hey, if you console guys want to pay more for less, that's totally fine. I'm just saying that I'm not going to buy a console. But it just shows how the whole convenience argument that people make for consoles, that's just fading away at this point. Because it looks like this gen on console, you're going to be spending most of your time uninstalling and reinstalling games because you don't have enough space, and that's considered convenient? Okay. I'm not even going to entertain the idea that that Unreal Engine demo could not possibly run in HDD. It's like I said in the original video. Let's say the PS5 and Series X are more powerful than an RTX 2080 Super, which is just not going to happen, but let's say for argument's sake that it is. When the RTX 3000 series comes out, let's say I have a 3000 card, which I probably wouldn't get because it's just crazy expensive, but let's just say I get a 3000 card. I would be able to do so much more with my PC with an HDD than a PS5 with an SSD. And that's just the truth. So when console fanboys try to make an argument that PC is holding gaming back, it just demonstrates how little they know about technology. But now moving on to the next video where I talk about the potential of another video game crash. In that video I pretty much said like it's very unlikely for the industry to have another crash like we did in 83 and 77. Just because of how versatile and far-reaching that the video game industry has become. Because back in 83, you had Atari, and that was pretty much it. Sure, you had Intellivision, you had all these other consoles, but Atari had like 85% control of the console market, and really what triggered the crash was the bankruptcy of Atari in 1983. But let's say tomorrow Sony went bankrupt or Nintendo went bankrupt, like that wouldn't be enough to crash the entire gaming industry. Like there would have to be a catastrophic event that would wipe out not just the gaming industry, but all of humanity. Because otherwise, I think we reached a point where the gaming industry is almost too big to fail. Because even if gamers reject these big AAA releases, there's so many other games they can play, like indie games, you know what I mean? And Shinsaken seems to agree. It would be impossible at this point to have a true crash like in the early 80s because of how big it is. However, I do see a possibility of a great reorganizing of how gaming is done though. Whether they're good or bad, only time will tell. Yeah, I think the video game industry will definitely change. It's already changing. I mean, the video game industry is almost completely unrecognizable from not only 10 years ago, but 5 years ago. So gaming will definitely continue to evolve and adapt, but at this point I feel like it's almost impervious to another recession. And then Magnamaster says, I think a big reason why the gaming industry stays strong is that some of the highest valued entertainment you can get as a consumer. There are games you get for $5 that provide over 10 hours of entertainment for you. Some games have over 100 hours of content, you can get those for $30 or much less than that a lot of the time. I've spent thousands of hours in some games I only paid $20 for. Compare that to movies that entertain you more passively and only for about 2 hours for Compare that to movies that entertain you more passively and only for about 2 hours for $15-20. And if you're tight on money, it's a pretty easy choice. People need entertainment even if they have massive money issues, so in times like these, they will gravitate towards entertainment that lasts longer for less money, even if it isn't 100% favored by their taste. Especially free games. They're a huge thing for poor people looking for entertainment and wanting distraction from life problems. It's easily a factor as well. Yeah, I totally agree. I also think the point you made about free-to-play games is also really good, because it completely removes the financial barrier that people have, like, oh, I don't want to pay $60. Well, for a lot of games like Fortnite, they don't have to pay anything. And also, like you said, there are a lot of games out there that you can get for $5, $10 that provide hundreds of hours of entertainment. So the consumer typically feels like they got their money's worth. But I think above the value that video games have, I think it's just the video game experience that is unparalleled by any other experience that you can have. It's an interactive adventure, which can make you feel a lot more immersed into the world than if you're just watching a movie or a TV show. And I think it's no coincidence that we've only had game crashes back when the technology was very primitive and not very immersive. But now we're at a point where there's some games that just look so realistic, it's like you're actually in a real world. But you're definitely right, there will always be demand for video games because there's really nothing else that provides a similar experience to it. So if people aren't going to stop playing video games no matter what, then we probably don't have to worry about another crash. And the next video I made was a mini documentary on PC gaming in the 1960s. I took a look at several computer games that were developed in the early to late 1960s, and it really is a fascinating period in video game history, but not a lot of people talk about it because, well, it's the 1960s. There wasn't even a video game industry back then. Most of these games were developed in computer labs and weren't available to the public, so of course it's not going to be remembered very well in history. But that's where I come in. So let's see what you guys thought. Magnamaster again, they sure did love space in the early days of video games. Makes a lot of sense. It doesn't require actual backgrounds to make a game that takes place in space, and being black and white worked well with the setting too. And of course he's referring to the multiple space games we got in the 60s, including Space War and Space Travel. But you're definitely right. I mean, you look at the video games from the 60s, even through the Atari 2600, it was just a black screen and not even color. And with a lot of games, that would be very jarring, but with a game set in space, that's kind of like a natural fit. And definitely a very clever way for developers to work around the limitations that they had. Dr. Dan says, glad to see you covering gaming history that most people haven't covered. I hope to see more. Do you have any plans to do a video on PC gaming in the 1970s? I believe that's when technology really started to go somewhere. Yeah, I'm definitely planning on making a video about PC gaming in the 70s somewhere in the near future, and that's definitely when things start to pick up and become a lot more interesting, because that is the first decade where you had a commercial home computer market, because in the 60s, computers were pretty much relegated to labs. So I think it would be cool to talk about the 70s, especially as it pertains to computer games, because really all you hear about in the 70s is Pong, and that's pretty much it, Pong. But you did have a lot of interesting computer games in the 70s that did pave the way for the future, so we definitely will talk about that in a future video. And then SpongeMatt says, gotta say, I was hooked and ready to hear about the other games from the 60s, now I'm anticipating a part 2 that might never come. Yeah, the video was a bit short, and there were some games that I just glossed over for 2 seconds because really there's the problem with documenting early history is that there's a lot of missing information. There's not even gameplay for a lot of these games. I'm just going off of screenshots. And that's why I only really focused the bulk of the video on Space War, because that was the most well-documented game, while there's very little documentation about a lot of the other games that were invented back then. So I really did the best I could. I'm sure my video about PC gaming in the 50s was a little bit better, but like I said, I worked with what I could. And then I made a video talking about what would happen if loot boxes were hypothetically banned, which is a realistic possibility considering you have the UK that's considering banning loot boxes. We already have countries like the Netherlands that did it, or not the Netherlands, it was Belgium. I don't know why I always get those two countries confused, but I think the conclusion I reached in that video is that even if loot boxes were banned, like, not much would change in the gaming industry, because these companies always find new and innovative creative ways to take money from you. So if there's no loot boxes, there's gonna be some other scheme. And Jiggery Pokery says, no need to ban them, just regulate. Slap an M on any game with them, or at least put a warning so adults can see warning. Your child is about to steal your credit card. We can't even end pre-ordering. We're going to stop loot boxes via boycott. Gamers are individualistic, not a collective. And that's actually a really good point, because a lot of gamers complain on the internet about how this sucks and everything, gaming is terrible, but they're contributing to the problem, especially pre-orders, which is a really good point, because you're giving them money that they didn't earn yet. So there's really no incentive for them to make the game good or bad if you already gave them your money. But people still keep pre-ordering these games, and it makes no fucking sense. But to be fair to the gamers, they did boycott Battlefront 2, and because of that, Battlefront 2 ended up being a really amazing game. But at the onset, Battlefront 2 was a fucking train wreck. It was filled with shitty, unfair RNG mechanics that locked heroes behind loot crates, and just represented how low EA is willing to go in order to make as much money as possible. So in that circumstance, gamers actually did act as a collective. They did boycott Battlefront 2 and forced EA to change. But in general, I think you're right. Like, a massive boycott of loot boxes in general is probably not going to work. It would really come down to the government making that decision, saying it promotes gambling and that's dangerous for kids and that would result in a regulation. It would probably be more akin to what you said, in that they wouldn't outright ban loot boxes, but they would significantly regulate them to the point where it's not within the interest of a developer to have them in the first place. We got another comment from Dr. Dan. Can't really disagree much here. If loot boxes are gone, then devs will just find more ways to make money in this day and age. It sucks, but that's what the AAA game companies have come to. I myself will never buy any game that has loot boxes and all that stuff because I refuse to support such disgusting practices. The developers don't deserve my money if they're going to treat consumers like garbage. Honestly, that's good on you, because there are a lot of people that want things to change. They want there to be no more loot boxes. They want games to actually be finished when they come out instead of being a live service, but they do nothing to actually be part of the change. They still buy these games, they still complain about them, and give the developers the money no matter what. So how's there going to be any change if you don't do anything to be part of the change? And too many people have this hive mindset that, well, everyone else is buying this game and I don't want to miss out. But all you're really doing is make sure that nothing ever changes because you're complacent. So we definitely need more Dr. Dans in the gaming community. Fuck what everyone else is doing. I'm doing my own thing. I don't support these business practices, so I'm not going to buy the game. We definitely need more people to think that way. And then I made a video talking about there being two different PlayStation 5s. One has no disc tray at all, but the other one does have a disc tray, and it kind of brings up this debate about physical versus digital. One of Sony and Microsoft's main goal this generation is to kill physical media because it threatens their foothold in the marketplace. Because if you buy a game used, Sony doesn't make any money, Microsoft doesn't make any money, and they just view it as a massive liability. So they would love for nothing else than to see physical media completely die off. Sony only said, oh, we support used games. They only did all that because Microsoft was fucking up. So that was a move to counteract the bullshit that Microsoft was doing, and it worked. But now it seems like demand for physical media has waned a lot over the years to the point where most of game sales come from digital. And of course, digital media is a lot more convenient than standing in a line at GameStop and dealing with them trying to sell all these fucking things to you. Like, shut the fuck up. I don't want to buy your bullshit. I just want to buy the game, you know? So it's just a lot more convenient to get the game digitally. You can preload it, and it just has all these added benefits. But it also comes at a cost. Because when you give up physical media, you're giving up a lot more than just discs. You're giving up an entire marketplace full of cheap games that are so much cheaper than what Sony charges and Microsoft charges on their storefronts. Because there's no such thing as a second-hand digital market on consoles. I mean, there kind of is with Amazon, but that's nothing compared to what you have on PC. So you're giving up the ability to have cheaper games on consoles. Games are going to be a lot more expensive if you just have the digital market. And you'll also give up your ability to sell games. Because right now, if you have a disc that you just don't want to use anymore, a game that you haven't played in years and you just want to get rid of it, you can sell it. Preferably not to GameStop because they just rip you off. But right now, you have that freedom. You can't resell digital games. You also can't trade digital games with your friends. So really, you're giving up a lot more than the $100 difference that there might be between the discless console and the console that has a disc tray. Italiano Siciliano Mistro says, digital will be the end of gaming for me. Then Ionis responds saying, I adapted to it and believe me, it isn't that bad. I always preferred physical media, but PS4, Xbox One, Switch are technically already digitally only since the vast majority of games launch broken and get fixed later on with patches which you have to download. And that's a good point. Like, with digital media, it's going to leave a lot of people out of gaming, especially people who live in areas that don't really have a good internet connection. Because now, even if you just want to play offline single-player games, you gotta be connected to the internet, right? But the other thing is, if physical media does die, like, it has nothing but itself to blame. Because the technology is obsolete, people find digital way more convenient, not only because you don't have to sit in lines at stores and go to physical locations to get games, but it's also that, like, there really isn't a tangible difference. I mean, in the sense, well, you can resell physical media, and I did mention all the benefits that physical has, but from a utilitarian perspective, physical media, like, doesn't have a direct benefit over digital, like, when you're actually playing the game. Because back in the PS2 days, consoles literally were plug and play. You put the disc in, and you booted right up. But now, even if it's a physical disc, you have to install the entire game on your hard drive, or at least most of the game, because the Blu-ray, I think it hold up like 10 gigabytes, but if the game's like 100 gigs, that really doesn't mean anything, you know? So if physical media dies, it won't because Sony and Microsoft killed it, it's really the market's decision. Because if there was such overwhelming demand for physical media, then a discless console wouldn't even be a thought. Which is a great segue into a comment left by James Brown, who says, disc will eventually become extinct. Digital media is better in almost every way, in my opinion. All your games are saved with one account. No matter where you go, what you do, your games will never be damaged or lost. I would hope that most people have switched over to the digital side. It just makes more sense. And the thing is, you're absolutely right. Like, I've made the case for physical media over the years, but to tell you the truth, I don't have too many physical discs. Physical discs? Let's try that again. I don't have a lot of physical discs. Like, I'm looking at my collection right now. On my PS4 and Xbox One combined, my total physical game library is about 12 games. And of course, over the years, I bought and sold a few more games, so that would kind of indicate that I have a lot to benefit from physical media because there were a lot of games that I actually resold and got money out of it. But at this point, the technology is obsolete. And I have a feeling that the 10th generation, the PlayStation 6, is most likely going to be completely digital. No physical media at all. But I guess we'll have to see how things play out. Then I weighed in on the whole Last of Us 2 controversy. And needless to say, the list of beloved developers in the video game community, it's growing smaller and smaller by year. Like, I remember a time not that long ago when everyone loved Bethesda. Everyone loved Rockstar Games. But now it seems like those companies have fallen off gamers' good graces, with Fallout 76 and a lot of the microtransactions with GTA 5, and then re-releasing GTA 5 constantly. I'm sure Bethesda will put Skyrim on PS5 because why wouldn't they? Point is, in 2020, this ain't the Bethesda and Rockstar that we used to know and love. And I guess the same can be said for Naughty Dog considering what happened with The Last of Us 2, because people seem to be overwhelmingly negative towards Naughty Dog and how they handle the narrative for The Last of Us 2. And not to mention the whole, oh yeah, you guys don't deserve multiplayer, we'll sell it to you separately for another $60. But just in general, a lot of people are really unhappy with Naughty Dog right now, and it seems pretty well deserved. Sailor Mercury says, I decided to boycott this game mainly because of how Naughty Dog, Sony, and Neil Cuckman have been acting, flagging channels with false DMCA notices and even getting a Twitter account banned for simply posting memes about the game. I see no reason to give money to left-wing nutcases who can't handle criticism or memes. I also love the hypocrisy of Sony, who had a puritanical crusade against sexuality in Japanese games for the past couple years, demanding censorship, but they allow a very graphic and boring sex scene in The Last of Us 2. Hypocrites. Yeah, I've made my opinions on censorship very clear, and we actually will get to that very shortly. But I absolutely agree that the way that Naughty Dog is treating their community is totally wrong, and it looks like it's biting them in the ass. And It's Fritz writes, man, I was gonna write a whole damn paragraph, but I'm just gonna contain myself. I was so hyped about this game, but when the spoilers came out, I was just like, well, it looks like Naughty Dog is out of my list of good game developers, and I can't believe there are talks of a third game. Yeah. I don't know how a third game is going to work, honestly. Like, they would really have to pull a rabbit out of their asshole for people to actually care about The Last of Us 3 at this point. I remember in that video I also threw a little shade at Doom Eternal and id Software fanboys defending the game not having any multiplayer. I mean, hey, if you want to pay more for less content, that's your decision, but if I decide that I don't want to buy the game, how is that casual? Isn't the casual thing to do is just do what everyone else is doing and buy the game? Like, what you're saying doesn't even make any sense. But don't worry, we'll get back to Doom Eternal a bit later on, because we got another fanboy that left a comment in one of my other videos. But I also made a video talking about Epic Games removing police cars from Fortnite to kind of make a political stance, like, we support Black Lives Matter, by pretending the police don't exist. It just seems very counterproductive and doesn't really accomplish anything. Because at the end of the day, who are you going to call if you have an emergency? Like, we need the police, whether you like it or not. It's just a fact of life. Without police, you have anarchy. And this isn't me trying to say, oh, like, Blue Lives Matter or whatever. Like, I'm not really trying to get political here. Like, I typically don't get political on this YouTube channel because it really doesn't serve any purpose except divide people. But I figured I'd talk about this because that's exactly what Epic Games is trying to do. Like, they're trying to promote some type of political stance on a video game for kids. Like, let's be real, the average person that plays Fortnite probably doesn't know how many senators there are in the US Senate. And of course, that's excluding people who live in other countries that don't have to give a fuck about US politics. But you know what I mean, like American kids that play Fortnite, why promote political stances? Like, it just doesn't do anything productive. Like, I play a video game to escape from the bullshit. I know, like, removing cop cars is a very subtle thing, but to me it just sends a really bad message, because you're pretty much telling kids, fuck the police. Which goes into a really good comment left by MagnaMaster, who says, what really annoys me is that these game companies delay all their shit globally. Why do I, as a European, have to deal with that because something happens in America? Innocent people die every day all around the world, but only now do they do this for PR. If they had any consistency, they wouldn't release anything for months, if not years, because tons of innocent people get killed every day in Hong Kong alone. But no, it only matters if American consumers care about the topic. In Germany, we have an excellent relationship with our police, so to us, removing police from things internationally is kind of fucked. Then he got a response from Sway Arcane, who says, Epic Games is based in North Carolina in the US, so of course they're going to care about what happens in the US. Plus, they are just cars. Ignore it. But I think what MagnaMaster was trying to really say was that we've had a lot of games, not just Fortnite, where content was fully delayed for weeks because of something going on in the United States. Like, why should Europeans have to deal with this at all? It's literally not their problem. And Hong Kong's another good point, because what about all the stuff that happens in Hong Kong, which is objectively worse than anything that goes on over here in the United States, but you still have companies like Blizzard that are jumping on the whole Black Lives Matter thing, which, you know, is fine, but at least be consistent. Because remember that Hearthstone player, Blitzchung? They suspended him from the esports tournament because he said something about Hong Kong. He said, like, I stand for the people of Hong Kong, what the Chinese authorities are doing is fucked up. Oh, he got banned. But how about Epic Games, a company that has strong ties to Tencent, which is a Chinese investment firm? I think Tencent has, 40% stake in Epic Games? Yeah, for some reason I never heard Epic say anything about Hong Kong. Weird, right? It's almost as if these corporations only care about making money, which is not surprising, but let's not pretend that they actually care about people. And we got Sierra Air again, who says, you just said person of color. I'm done. Well, what would you rather me say? The N-word? And we mentioned video game censorship earlier. Well, I made a full video about it, pretty much saying that it's almost never okay to censor games no matter what, even if it's a game simulating a school shooting or something like that. Like, video games should never be censored unless it's something that's specifically illegal and against the law, like child exploitation, if it's like a child porn simulator or something like that. But generally, I think censoring any type of art form, whether it's a video game or something else, that's totally against freedom of expression and free speech. And we got Technology Productions 2020 who says, unpopular opinion, censorship in general is not okay. And the sad truth is that actually is an unpopular opinion. So many people calling for censorship, whether in politics, censor certain people that say things that are offensive. Like, what the fuck has this world come to? It's like people want their lives to be controlled. We got Sailor Mercury again who says, you are spot on. I oppose all forms of censorship, especially in the guise of protecting people from harmful material. Most gamers are grown adults who should be able to decide what they want to play themselves. Let the ESRB ratings board label a game and that be it. I hate that Sony not only censors Japanese games for sexual content, but are complete hypocrites about it. They allow graphic and boring sex scenes in The Last of Us 2, but games with actual attractive characters being sexy are not allowed. You're just absolutely right. To try and tell adults, grown adults, what they can and can't play, it's just so unnecessary. Sony and Microsoft can curate certain content they don't want to see on their front page, like if you want to see pornographic video games, then you have to go through a filter. I think that's a fair compromise. But to outright ban these types of games and censor them, even if it's not the actual government censoring it, I think corporate censorship is just as bad. And that also includes what you're seeing right now with Facebook banning certain pages and Reddit banning subreddits. Even if the content is edgy and downright offensive, these corporations shouldn't be allowed to censor. Because if you give these corporations so much control over our thoughts, we might as well live in a communist country. We got another comment from Dr. Dan. I agree with you 100%. I don't think censorship in games really helps anyone. If anything, the person who plays the game should simply either play it or don't play it if they don't want to. Simple as that. Censorship really just removes free speech and creativity to a degree, as it restricts game makers to what they can make and actually profit off of. I just think censorship shouldn't be a thing, and not just games but media in general, as it's awful and puts these unnecessary barriers on creators, although good luck trying to convince the media that. Yeah, you're definitely spot on about the media. They'll still try to tell you that video games cause real-life violence, and having a game like Active Shooter, it will make people actually commit school shootings. Like, think about it logically. I mentioned this exact point in the video, that if there was actually any logic behind that, then we'd have a lot of 13-year-olds right now robbing banks and pulling heists. Because GTA 5 is still one of the most popular games right now, and you also have other games like Payday, you know what I mean? It's just silly. And you're also right that really what it comes down to, if you find something so offensive and grotesque, then ignore it. Don't buy the game if you don't like the content in it. And if you don't like certain subreddits that say offensive things, then don't follow them. And if someone posts something hateful or offensive on Twitter, well, there's a block button for a reason. Fucking use it. Other people shouldn't have to suffer because you're a whiny little bitch. And then here's my last video for the month of June, which was another episode of my unpopular gaming opinion series. And here we have Dr. Daniel again. I don't know how many times he's appeared in this video so far, but he leaves pretty good comments. He actually responds to all the unpopular opinions that I had, so let's take a look. Number 1, not much of an MMO person myself, haven't ever been able to get myself into them. They just feel too big and I don't see the appeal of them either, because in my first opinion I said that MMOs suck. My second opinion I said TF2 sucks. Not a fan of TF2 either. I can't get into it. I can also say that I enjoy Team Fortress Classic far more, but one issue both it and TF2 share is that it takes so long to get you into, as you need to learn the characters, and when most players are experts who've played for years, you'll likely get obliterated. So I still find TF2 slow and clunky. TFC is fast-paced and still fun in spite of the large learning curve. For me personally, I don't like either of those games, but everything you said I pretty much agree with. Like, TF2 is just way too slow. It takes way too long to get into. And as far as me saying Valorant is better than CSGO, he says I only played 23 minutes of CSGO. That was frankly enough for me. I prefer Counter-Strike Source by a large margin. Yes. I fucking think that CSS is much better than CSGO. Even though I'm not really a big fan of either of them, Source is still definitely way better than Go. And he also says he hasn't played too much of Doom 2016 multiplayer. But yeah, it's very linear, the single player, and like you said, once you play it once or twice, it lacks replay value, totally. And as far as me saying that Modern Warfare sucks, he says the last good COD game was Black Ops 1, which I totally agree with. Black Ops 1 is my favorite COD game of all time. And the COD series has definitely gone downhill over the past few years. So, wow, we actually have someone that agrees with all my unpopular opinions. That's so rare. Then we have Magna Master, who really took issue with some of my opinions, especially the one talking about how Doom Eternal sucks because it doesn't have multiplayer. He's trying to say single player is still the best thing about Doom, and even if that's true, like, you can only play it like once or twice, and then that's it. Multiplayer objectively adds so much more replay value, and I love the 2016 multiplayer. And you even admitted yourself that Doom 4 multiplayer is good, so why are you defending them taking it out? I just don't get that. I've yet to hear a good justification for them taking out multiplayer in Doom Eternal, or, they had battle mode, but that's one game mode compared to, 12 or 13 we had in Doom 2016? Why are you defending them so hard? I just don't get it. I guess you're a fanboy, I don't know. But to me, there's no good excuse besides id wants to cut corners, and that's exactly what they did with Doom Eternal. Even if the gameplay is so much more fast-paced and so much better, well, it's a sequel. The gameplay is supposed to be better by default. And Magnum Master also said I don't have an informed opinion on TF2 because I only spent 10 hours. Only spent 10 hours. Like, in no universe does it take longer than 10 hours to decide if a game is good or not. Like, bad gameplay is bad gameplay, and TF2 definitely has bad gameplay. But that's my opinion, and you can feel free to disagree, and that's totally fine. That's the whole point of unpopular opinions. I'm sure we all have them, right? But that's it for this month's recap. Thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.